Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn series. Can't believe we're in June, but we are. Nice to see. We have such a great turnout today. So we'll get started. Thanks again for joining our Lunch and Learn. For those who are not familiar with me, my name is Maja. I am the Senior HR Consultant with H2R and your host for today. As you can see, you have been muted. So please use our chat or Q&A box if you have any questions, and you may ask questions at any time. We have two speakers joining us today. Kicking things off, we have Jackie Lauer joining us this month with an interesting topic on building inclusive HR policies for an aging workforce. And our second speaker, Brenda Hooper, will be talking to us about conflict management coaching on the fly. Can't wait to hear. So without further ado, Jackie, take it away. Oh, Jackie, you're muted.
You'd
There
think
we
of
go.
all these years of viewing virtual workshops that I would remember to unmute.
All good.
So hello, everybody. It's good to see you all. I'm hoping you're all enjoying this beautiful weather that we're having. I know it's giving me a lot of energy. So let's jump in. I want to talk to you about the competitive advantage of working with our older workers. And frankly, I'm one of them now, which is horrifying and exciting all at the same time. I'll just quickly go through some demographics. I want to talk about why recognize the needs of our silver workers. I'm calling them silver workers for right now. I'm not sure if that language is appropriate. You're okay to give me feedback. It's where I landed when I was designing this for you. Let's talk about obviously the importance of inclusive HR practices and including our silver workers as part of it, and then the benefits of working with our age diverse workforce. So normally I said to Maya, normally I squish in a whole lot of content. This time it's less busy with a lot of stuff coming at you. So I want you to feel very welcomed to put stuff in the chat to share with each other. We're all in this journey together. It shouldn't just be me who's the expert. There's a ton of you in our virtual room that have perspective. So it's just my way of saying, please feel free to share some of the things that you're going through. All right, Spencer, let's dig in. So let's talk about the growing stats around the silver workers. And so one of the things that we do know is that the workers age 65 plus are the fastest growing segment for us in Canada and North America. And I was looking at some of the stats from Stats Canada, and we look at 2030, it is projected that 25% of Canadians will be age 65 or older, right? Because of the baby boomers. We've been talking about this at least for 3 decades, knowing it's coming. My belief is some companies and organizations are ready, some are not. And so I'd love to know what people are doing and how that's impacting your workplaces. The Canadian Labor Force Survey also indicated in 2022 that about 25% of employed Canadians are 55 and older. So interesting, 2022, 25% of our working Canadians are 55 and older. So, and I'm not hearing a lot of us talking about that. And I suppose there's a heightened sensitivity because of the age that I'm at, right? I'm paying attention to what's going on out in the world, how we're talking about it, what's our narrative. Many of them are choosing to unretire or to delay retirement. And so that's becoming more the trend. I was thinking about my own parents retired at 56 and 57. And then I look at my siblings who are the end of the baby boomers. They're 9 and 10 years older than me. They're all retiring at 65, 66. And to me, that embodies the trend that we're seeing in Canada in general. So we often overlook this pool, but the reality is that we have access to talent with knowledge and experiences. And what are we doing with that? And what's the impact of that on our org? All right, Spencer. So the business case for inclusion, right? It's not rocket science, but I just want to make sure we're using similar language when we talk about this, right? It isn't just good ethics to include our older workers. It's smart. It's a smart business move. So we know that we're going to likely boost knowledge transfer. So keeping our older workers on a little bit longer to help bring the younger folks up a little bit faster. We know that we've been talking about DEI for a couple of years now. Some of us are doing it well, some are not. When we include the aging workforce, we're going to still foster innovation. It is actually, I'll talk about it in a second, but it's a bit of a myth to believe most of them are closed-minded. I'm too old to change. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's like, that's actually not the lessons. The companies that are leaning into this as a strategy are finding their assumptions were wrong, which is really fun to see. Strengthening our employer brand. So when we're rounding out the diversity of our teams, which also includes our competitive advantage with the silver-haired workers, we're going to strengthen the brand and help address some of the skill shortages that some of our industries are facing. All right, Spencer. So then the question becomes, what are their needs? Like, what is the silver worker needing from us? And I'm hearing this a lot. Some of you are probably familiar with Simon Chan's work and the work he's doing with the Modern Elder Academy. I've had the honor of doing a certification through them around transitions. How do we navigate the transition of retirement, for instance? And what I'm seeing a lot of in the data and in the work that we're doing is around the desire for purpose and recognition. That's no different than when we're working with a 30-year-old, let alone a 60-year-old. And if you look at the work in positive psychology, Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, tells us all human beings, regardless of gender and age and where we live in the world and what language we speak, we want meaningfulness. And that doesn't have to show up in a full-time job at, 40 hours a week. But we do deserve to have a purpose. I remember, I don't know about you guys, but I remember when my mom was retiring, the first thing she said was, I'm going to volunteer. And I said to her, talk to me about that. She just said, I feel like I still need to contribute. I feel like I still need to give something to the world. And then she said, I need purpose, honey. It's like we all do. We want flexible work arrangements. So when we're looking at what is likely needed by this generation, and if they're going to extend their stay in the workplace, it's being able to accommodate for different hours. So lots of organizations are creating part-time roles because that's the want of the older workforce. And in some cases, that's not the case. So we've been working towards flexible work arrangements anyway. The pandemic has taught us how to be a little more nimble in that regard. More accommodation around ergonomic and accessible workplaces. Some of you know I have a neurological condition, and I've become very aware of how poorly we're still treating those with physical disabilities in particular. We're getting there, but gosh, it's a slow journey. And so if we can find some ways to accommodate these workers, that can help us to fill that talent shortage that some of us are experiencing. And then, of course, they want an opportunity to mentor and to share their knowledge. There's nothing that, it just feels good to be able to give back and to leave something with the world. I was working with a team of hospice workers just yesterday, and one of the fellas in the room, everyone was honoring him because he had been there the longest. And you could see the pride in him that he was able to contribute to some of their careers over that many decades. You could just see it. His head was held high and his shoulders sat back. But what was also fun for me to observe as an outsider was how connected they were as a team. And that connection piece, it feels part of that purpose, right? When we feel connected to our community, doing meaningful work with flexible arrangements that accommodate the needs, don't we all want that? Regardless of who we are and how old we are. But these are, in all the surveys that have been done in understanding their needs, this is what they're asking for. All right, next slide. All right, bear with me for a second. So what if this, again, I want you to throw into the chat if you can think of other ones, but the reality is that many believe that our older workers are less adaptable. I referred to that a little bit ago. And so research is showing us that's actually not the case, which is awesome. So I want to just challenge or bust that myth, or at least ask you to be curious to find out if your assumptions are right or wrong, right? A lot of our policies, whether written or unwritten, are outdated because they're based on old narratives that we have. And the world is changing. The workforce is aging, but so is our health is improving. There's more we're more but we're more nimble and flexible. And so I also giggle. I was thinking about a conversation with my ex-husband Mark, and he said, do you ever get clients that are done learning? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, I don't know, Jackie, I think I'm too old to keep learning. And what I love is here he is now, and the guy just keeps on learning. It's one of his superpowers. He was probably just tired that day, right? We all have a moment. So I want to make sure that we're challenging some of those ideas, like the older workers are less adaptable. There are barriers like old policy, old narratives, old stories. So just challenge them and take a look at what policies you may, in fact, have in place or not. They're often unspoken policies. Misconception is that retirement is the only option. Isn't that interesting? And I think that's what I'm liking about the work that Simon Chan is sharing with the Modern Elder Academy. It's because we're trying to change the language around the aging workforce, right? To be able to take a look at the fact that my mom called it third age learning. So when she retired in her, 57 years old, my mom started going to university courses. They called it third age learning for the older workforce. And here she is 84 and she still takes courses. Just love that about her. She wants to keep learning and she wants community to do that with. So just challenging that assumption. It's not the only option. We can work part-time. We can volunteer. A lot of retirees are going into business so that they can still contribute, but still manage their own time. When that happens, it can be a loss for some of the other workplaces that need their talent. So keep that in mind. And then another barrier is just lack of targeted benefits. We're not being I'm doing the we thing a lot. Clearly I'm resonating with this age group. We want to make sure that the accommodations, including benefits and the way that we're compensated, is what we're needing and looking for. But at the same time, we're often dismissing the value that they had. It's like, well, they're leaving eventually, so we don't need to keep them engaged. Or like, or we're going to have them for another 5 years. Let's leverage that and make sure that they're feeling that purposefulness, that they're feeling appreciated and recognized for the contributions. Again, I feel like I'm stating the obvious. Don't we all want that? But something happens in our social narrative that's naturally, probably with good intention a long time ago, you slowly dismiss the worker so they can depart. But that we just need to remember the narrative is changing. And so to pay attention to some of the behaviors that we're embodying are no longer working, and to write a new narrative around this together. All right, next slide. Okay. I'm moving slowly over here. So almost done. I did warn you, Maja, going a little faster than usual. So what do we do, right? As HR, let alone as companies that want to improve our employer brand, that we want to make sure we're getting the right skill sets we need at the right time when we need them. So, practical steps are going to include offering flexible schedules, looking for opportunity. I've got two companies right now where they're looking at the talent pool and the jobs that are inside their organization and figuring out which ones could they do job sharing. Where is an opportunity for instance, two people to share one role, and what would the impact be on the team, on the customers they serve? So I'm starting to hear more of that kind of openness and adaptability. Looking at the flexible schedules, improving the workplace accessibility. I was thinking about just showing up. Now, granted, they're a healthcare company, but I let them know in my proposal, I have a neurological condition that standing and walking is difficult to me, so please limit access to stairs. And I'm learning to put that in my proposals. And it's taken me years to find the courage. I had internal fear that I would be dismissed because I'm walking with a cane or I'm walking with a walker. The more I get real and authentic about it, what I need, the more people meet me where I'm at. It's like, oh, Jackie, good lesson for me. But sometimes we have to create the safe place in the interview process or in the attraction process that lets them know that they're welcomed. Does that make sense? I'm hoping that's resonating. So really looking at those kinds of things. Also, let's make sure we're finding ways to celebrate their contributions, whatever that looks like. We want that for every human being in our workplace, don't we? So just being intentional about how we do it with our silver workers. And then creating mentoring programs. And so this one company I've been working with out of Oklahoma City, they've been around over 50 years, larger company. They have a specific program that invites their older workers to be mentors. They train them on how to be a mentor, and then people get to apply to be mentored. And it is one of their biggest, longest running programs. I think that's very cool. And it automatically builds these sort of relationships of trust for the multi-generations that are in the workplace, and making sure they're offering shared value and community to each other. So taking a look at tailoring your benefits as well. Like, are there some opportunities in here for our silver workers that could help attract and retain them a little bit longer? Right? Just out of curiosity, and just put it in the chat. How many of you in your organizations are intentionally building programs for our silver workers? How many of you are intentionally building programs for our silver workers? So I'm just going to look in the chat and see what you're saying.
Nothing so far.
Yep, taking a peek. Everybody's eating lunch.
Or they're not including their silver workers in their policies.
Yeah, would love to hear your perspective. And if no one wants to share, then I can't force you. I'd
By
love
the
to
way,
hear even after this session. So if anyone comes up with ideas, thank you, Dee. You're so sweet for even responding. We're not including them yet, at least unintentionally, right? All right, Spencer, let's flip to the last one. Right, so why embrace the silver workforce? We want increased productivity and loyalty. And so when we're treating our older workers well, we're also demonstrating to our younger workers that this is what we want for you as you age here. So it helps with productivity because we're retaining the knowledge, helps with the loyalty. Just reading Michelle's notes, not including them policies of generalized regard. Fair enough. When we bring in the silver workers, we're improving our diversity, getting access to perspectives. I know even for me, there's times in my life at my age where I go, yeah, we've tried that before. And then it's like, oh, I just became that person. I'm like, well, we've done it before. However, it's like, okay, tell us what you did do and what could we do differently to make that a success. So how we engage in those conversations so that I don't judge myself or feel judged because I just said, we've done that before. It's like, okay, help Jackie in those moments to think a little bit differently, to share what she does know and see if it adds value to the conversation. Right? Stronger community engagement and brand loyalty. So when we're connected to each other, multi-generations, it's so powerful. Like, I know I'm talking about the hospice. They were just with me yesterday. And so I looked at the room and I thought, oh my gosh, I should take a photo because they were 20 to 70. And the energy, I mean, they're in a shared mission. It's a healthcare program. So when you have that kind of really clear mission in terms of who you're serving, that often helps. But what I was observing in their energy was their deep respect for the differences that they all bring to the organization. And for all of us who have experienced that, it's nothing better. It's pretty powerful. And of course, my belief, clearly I'm biased, but it's a competitive advantage in this year going forward. You know, there is talent shortages in multiple industries and certain specific skill sets. I love the guy was the only man in the room yesterday in hospice. So his name, he used to be a pastor. He's now a clinical psychologist working in hospice care. And you know what? I don't know, Stephen was probably, I think he was actually early 60s, if I'm not mistaken. He was the one who knew the most about AI. I loved it. I found myself shocked and I'm like, oh, Jackie, you clearly had a judgment. He just blew me away in terms of his courage, his vulnerability, and also his innovation. So in my opinion, and in the opinion of a number of companies, and I was looking up who in Canada is doing this in terms of strategically and intentionally attracting the older workers. And it's companies like Health Canada, two government departments specifically are targeting. There were two. RBC is another one. They have specific programs that are designed for older workers. So to me, it's like I want to get more of those stories. I want to see more of those companies sharing their experience of that with us so that we can do a better job. Margaret, I'm just going to take a peek at your note. Frequently outplaced. Yep. I love that. Higher fractional. Absolutely. Oh, look at you go. 74 working with us and really tried to gain as much knowledge during her time. See, these are the stories I want to hear about. These are the stories. Thank you. And last slide, I guess, is just my way of saying thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here and making sure that my call to action for you is to do something intentional. Go back one slide if you don't mind, Spencer, just one. Just my ask of you, it's like, the flag that I'm waving is choose one thing. Look at your current policies for age inclusivity, or engage silver workers for feedback and get ideas from them. Like, what do you want to see more of or less of here? What else could we do differently or better? Maybe pilot a specific program or initiative that helps attract, whether it's part-time work or, accessibility, and then making sure that you're promoting any kind of training program that understands how to communicate across generations, and making sure that we're being age inclusive. So that's my little call to action for you. Thank you very much for letting me be here, Maja.
Of course, Jackie. And by the way, I love the term. So,
Okay, good.
yeah, I
It's like, oops,
do.
I don't know.
I think it's all right, but you might get some feedback. Who knows? And perhaps for those who are not familiar with you, Jackie, do you want to just briefly describe what you do in your day to day?
Thank you, darling. Yeah, I've been working. This is my 25th anniversary, the month of June. I've been in business as a small business owner, specifically working with leaders and leadership teams on workplace culture and leadership development. So everything from facilitating offsite retreats like with the hospice yesterday, or working on how do we build courageous conversation, like, because I love where we're about to go. It's going to be a really good second session. So looking forward to being a student. And then it's one-on-one or team coaching. So that's what I do. And I'm a partner with H2R, honored to work with you all. We're just, anyway, I'm going to shut up now.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jackie, for coming back. Um, all right, so moving on, we have Brenda. Brenda, are you with us?
I am here. Yes.
Excellent. All right, well, take it
Hello.
away.
Hello, everybody. Okay, let's get this party started. I am so used to having really everybody's face on the screen and cameras on and whatnot. If that's not happening today, that's okay. But please, 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 let's interact because this is all about connecting and communication. So thank you. Thank you for having me. And Jackie, I just want to say I really appreciated with what you were saying and presenting. And I'm thinking of my 85-year-old father who owns his business, grant you, but he went into work every day because he loved it, because he just wanted to connect with people and be a part of. So, it doesn't matter the age, as long as they're able to do it and continue to love it, then that's great. So thank you so much for having me. And yes, I'm Brenda Hooper. So I'm a conflict management coach, mediator, and someone who has spent a lot of time helping people feel more confident navigating conflict at work. I do a lot of work within organizations. I'm in British Columbia, and my company is called Discussions by Design, and I do a lot of prohibitive action complaints through WorkSafe BC, as well as I do programs of integrated conflict management services into organizations. So that's a little bit about me. So today I want to introduce you to a really practical approach that you can use, especially when things feel tense but don't need a full-blown process. And I call it conflict management coaching on the fly. And it's designed to help you as HR leaders support your people quickly and effectively without needing a formal sit down every time. So, why conflict management coaching? Well, unresolved conflict is a leading cause of workplace stress, which accounts for over 50% of lost workdays in North America. So, I just want to check in with all of you, first of all, before we go on any further here. So, when you hear the word conflict, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Just in the chat box. When you hear conflict, what comes to mind? I'll give you a second. Disagreement, argument, anger, right? Lots of mixed feelings there, aggression. Yeah, so it's no wonder we don't like conflict, right? Like for the most part, people do not feel comfortable dealing with conflict. Many avoid conflict, and there are a lot of people who just hope it will go away. But the thing is, it does not go away. And I have dealt with a lot of HR professionals who fall into this category. And sadly, but I think that that is changing, where you are now, as HR professionals, getting the training that you need to deal with these sort of things. So Spencer, I see that you're already on the next slide, so you don't need to do anything at this point. But thank you. Yes, in terms of just not feeling really comfortable with conflict. So what is conflict coaching exactly? So it's a one-on-one and sometimes a one-on-two, but typically a one-on-one process where you help someone gain clarity and confidence around a conflict situation. So you don't need to fix the issue. You help them explore what's going on and what they want to do next. It's all about moving forward. It's not rehashing the past. It's also a great way to encourage personal ownership instead of employees relying on HR to solve it for them. So, how many of you have had someone come to you about a conflict and you knew they really just needed space to talk it out and find a solution? How many of you? Just a yay, yes, thumbs up. How many of you? Yeah, definitely. So let me just ask this question. How often are you dealing with conflict? Let's say on a weekly basis. How often? Once? Twice? Every day? All the time. Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope then that the tools that you're just going to get a really quick tool that you can use. So Spencer, yeah, if you can move to the next slide, please. Okay. So let's be honest. Not every conflict needs a formal intervention, right? Sometimes people just they need a nudge, a new way of thinking about the issue. And that's where on the fly comes in. These are quick, meaningful conversations that help people pause, reflect, and take ownership. And this saves you time and helps build employee confidence. So, according to CPP Global, which is a Myers-Briggs company, they did a study on workplace conflict. And managers spend, they say, 35 to 40% of their time, and based on how you just responded, it sounds like that's pretty true, dealing with workplace conflict. So, organizations that implement coaching programs report a 20 to 30% reduction in escalated conflict cases requiring HR or leadership intervention. So instead of getting pulled into every disagreement, you coach your people to think critically, reflect on what matters, and take the next steps. So, how often do you find yourself acting more like a referee than a coach? How often do you feel like you're just having to referee things, or you hear your managers having to feel like they have to referee? Right? So how often might that be? A lot, just a little? You can just stick that in the chat box. But also, what impact does it have on your time and I'd say your sanity, right? So how often does this impact amount of time? If you were to think about the time that you spend, how much time does that take out of your day when you're dealing with conflict? If you think about that and add that to the chat box, that would be great. So as you're doing that, and Spencer, you can move on to the next slide, please. So here's the good news. You don't need to be a certified coach to use a coach approach. So this is a simple 4-step process that you can use in a hallway chat, a coffee break, or a Zoom call. So step number 1 is when you take a look at conflict and you want to identify the category of conflict, here's the trick. First of all, when you boil it all down, conflict, there's only 3 types of conflict. So there's task conflict, which is what needs to be done, process conflict, which is how do we go about doing it, and relationship conflict. Those are the personality clashes. Those are the ones that don't feel very comfortable to deal with. Okay. So just so you know, high performing teams will have task and process conflict. They do not have the relationship conflicts. So then step number 2 is determine what is important to each person. So this is what you're doing is you're identifying their interests. In the mediation terms, interests are the underlying beliefs, the values, the hopes, the concerns, the aspirations. So what I did, and just give me a thumbs up, I did drop in a document into the chat box on a list of common interests that we're going to use in a moment. So just I want to make sure everybody has seen that in the chat box. Can you just give me a thumbs up that you've received that you see it there? If not, I can certainly drop it in again. Perfect. I'm seeing a thumbs up. Excellent. Okay. So you want to look at what's important to them. Okay. And then you're going to reframe. So you're going to identify their interests and then you reframe. And reframing is a technique that is goal-oriented and future-focused. So when you hear an employee stating a conflict in negative terms, you reframe the negative and shift their thinking to a positive focus. Help them shift from blame to curiosity, possibilities, constructive dialogue, and then perhaps help them brainstorm, a solution. Always end with an action or a small next step for them. Now, you don't need to have all the answers. In fact, you don't need any of the answers. You just need to ask the right questions. And so this isn't about giving advice, it's about guiding people towards their own insights. So as you take a look at this 4-step process, which of these 4 steps do you think would be easiest for you to start using right away? And which one might be a bit of a stretch for you? Let's just add that into the chat box. Which one is easier or you can start with right away, and which one's going to be a bit of a stretch for you? If any, or maybe it's all easy for you. Just let me know. So identifying interests, determining what's important, easy, yeah. You can't see the link that was sent, Leslie. It wasn't a link, it was an actual download. It was just a document, a PDF document. But I'm going to add it again, and then it's there for you.
Brenda, I just replied to it, so hopefully everyone can see it now. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
And I think we have a question. Someone raised their hand.
Okay. Yeah.
Denise Duarte. Here, let me see if I can unmute you. Or did you want to just type in your question? You're welcome to do that as well.
So Diana, you're saying reframing interests might be difficult. It is a technique, and I'm going to walk you through that technique in just a little bit here. So, and help you practice doing that. So Denise, yeah, if you had accident, no question. Okay. And Dawn's not able to open the PDF. Okay. I'm wondering why you can't open the PDF. I'm going to try one more time. Perhaps. Oh, that's interesting. Now I can't, don't have access to load it in now. Okay.
It's opening okay for me. So if perhaps we can send it out after as well.
Okay, yeah, for sure. That's okay. we're on the fly, so if things change, then so I can't open it either. Wow. Okay. So something's going on there, but that's okay. I'll walk you through it, and we'll still play around with it. I'll give you some identifiers in terms of what some interests are. Okay. So Spencer, yeah, if you can just move to the next slide, please. Yeah, not cooperate. Story of my life sometimes when it comes to technology. Okay. So, yeah, okay, thanks, Spencer. So reframing is the secret sauce in conflict coaching, and it's how we shift a conversation from blame and frustration onto this curiosity and solutions. So when someone says they don't trust me, we help them look at what else might be going on. Maybe the manager just hasn't communicated clearly. Maybe they want to support and not micromanage. So a good reframe helps people stop spiraling and start seeing the bigger picture. Spencer, if you can go to the next slide, please. So let's just do a little bit of practice here. And so you can't get my hand out, so we'll play around, but I think you'll get this pretty quick. So the key is to find the underlying interests. So if you remember, I said interests are the fears, needs, concerns, beliefs, the hopes, the aspirations. What is it that they want? It's the underlying things that are really their drivers. So for instance, in the first example here, the employee says, my manager is constantly checking on me. They don't trust me to do my job. In the chat box, what are some potential interests that you can identify for this employee? What does this he, she, they, what do they want when you hear that type of statement? What is it that they're looking for? So just in the chat box, just guess, hunch. Trusted, independence, autonomy. Yeah, you got it. Okay, autonomy. Great. So yes, autonomy, may have trust, self-assurance, acceptance, right? So you get what those are the interests. Okay, so now what I want you to do is identify what the manager's interest. What do you think the manager might want? What could their potential interests be? Ensure productivity. The manager might want feedback. Okay. For them to do the job correctly. So what I want to do, and we call it, you want to dig. I call it clicking the mouse, basically. To want them to do the job correctly, why? What's important, Jenna, just because you answered that one, what's important about them doing the job correctly? What might that mean? So if any of you can think about that and add to the chat box. Results, reassurance, yeah. So that's what you want you do is when you're looking at this conflict on the fly is if they say something like, I just want them to do the job properly, then you ask the question, what's important to you about that? Right? What's important? Results, reputation, you got it. Okay, perfect. Love seeing these responses. Okay, so let's practice the reframe now. So in this reframe, you've identified for the employee autonomy and trust, and we named some of those things. So let's just play around here. There's lots of different ways you can reframe this. So for instance, what's an example that you would reframe to put into that person that just made that statement, reframe it into something that is their interest, what they're needing. So, for example, a reframe could be, it sounds like you're valuing independence. Okay, get it? So, what are some other reframes that you could possibly use there for this first example? Type in a reframe. You've identified their interest. Now just state their interest, right? The positive. What is it that they're wanting? Give you a second to type. Okay, Jenna, great. Now, so listening to understand that you might be frustrated with the manager's approach. So if you recall, the reframe is bringing it into that positive forward motion, right? So we identified that employee might want independence. So that's the reframe, is bringing in that independence into the statement. So it sounds like you might just be wanting some independence. Got it? Right, great. Thank you, Margaret. Yeah, sounds like you're needing some more autonomy in this role. Okay, so that's the power, right? And when you think of it, if somebody's saying something like, like complaining about something, and then you bring it into what is their interest, what happens is they're going, yeah, you got me. You're listening to me. You understand. And that's what they want, right? That's what we all need. Okay, so that's just step one. The next step, though, is you as the coach. What's a question that you can ask them? A coach approach question to get them to create their own action step. Okay, so it could be, as an example, you might ask them, or state, could their check-ins be about wanting to stay informed or to support you? So there's a shift in the thinking. And then you can ask them a question, how might you approach them? So that's giving you an example of how you can use that coach approach. So what's another question as a coach approach question that you can respond to them with to get them to take action and take accountability for their actions? See what you come up with. Great. Yeah, Diana. What would be a better way? Okay. What would independence look like for you? Perfect. Okay. Do we want to try the second one here? Employee says, I'm doing all the work while Jordan barely communicates. Good answers. Okay. So I'm doing all the work while Jordan barely contributes. What would that employee's interests be? What are some interests that you can come up with? What does that employee want, need? Fairness, yeah. Distribution, cooperation, recognition. You're on the ball here. Okay, perfect. What about Jordan? What do you think Jordan might need? If you were to hunch, direction, maybe more training, role clarity. Okay. I love it how much you guys are engaging with me. Thank you. Okay, let me just see here. Communication, feedback. Okay, you got it. So it could also be Jordan's needing some independence, or maybe Jordan's got some time constraints and has some concerns about that with something else that's going on, right? So you're doing a little bit of hunch there. So let's do this reframe. What would you reframe? How would you reframe to this employee with that statement? I'm doing all the work. How would you reframe that? Identifying what this employee's interests are. So all you do is reframe it to their interest. What does that sound like to you? Perfect. Feeling overwhelmed. So Jordan isn't contributing as much. Yeah. So again, moving to future focus, it could be a reframe of you want fairness and recognition, right? They can just be that simple. You want fairness and recognition. And what happens is maybe you don't get the right reframe, and that's okay because they're going to correct you. And when they correct you, that's bringing them more clarity of what it is that they're really looking for. So there's never a wrong here. It sounds like you want some fairness or you want some recognition. Well, actually, no. I think that what I really need now is some contribution here. I don't know, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing or something like that, or I need some assurity. Okay. So what about Jordan? If you were to think about what's going on with Jordan, and we've got his responsibilities or independence, you could be also looking at ways in which you can help reframe maybe what is going on for Jordan, or if you had that insight. So let's taking the coach approach now in coaching on the fly. What's a question that you can ask this employee to move them towards having a conversation with Jordan themselves? What's a question you can ask this employee? What ideas? Hey, Jordan, we've noticed you've not been contributing as much as your team. Okay. So this is you're going to be, you're reframing the employee making the statement. So the coach approach is that you're going to be asking this employee something like, as an example, so what's your ideal outcome? What does this employee really want from Jordan? What's your ideal outcome? How might you approach a conversation with Jordan to clarify these expectations? Right? Bring it into them. Have them be responsible for what it is for their ask. Okay. So hopefully that's giving you a couple of ideas in terms of how to use reframing. And reframing is so, so powerful. And it does take some practice. So I encourage you to do that. Spencer, if you can just move to the next slide, please. So here's why this matters. When you coach on the fly, you're helping people build conflict resilience. And that means they're not just surviving conflict, they're learning from it. They bounce back and they handle future issues better, and they're less dependent on HR. So this kind of resilience doesn't just help relationships. It improves productivity and well-being too. And after all, isn't that what we want in a healthy workplace? So a study by the Mediation Training Institute found that employees who receive conflict coaching report a 63% increase in confidence in handling difficult conversations after just a few sessions. And as a Mediation Training Institute certified trainer and coach, and I'm also a charter mediator through the H2R Institute of Canada, I partner with organizations to create these customized informal conflict management systems, such as conflict coaching and mediation, into their process. So if you are interested in learning more about what that might look like for your organization, just reach out to me. Be happy to have a chat with you. So what I would like also to do, I'm just going to drop in the link, just a second here. Let me just grab the link first of all. It is to drop in a conflict resilience quiz that you or anybody else can take and learn more about your conflict resilience. So it's a really insightful quiz, but it's also one that gives examples and some structure and tasks and just ways in which to continue to improve. So anyway, I hope that you find helpful and some information there for you. It's the conflict resilience quiz. So your organization is not to avoid conflict. Don't let people do that. Let them build the confidence and the capability to manage it. And that just also helps them in their families, their communities. It just is a gift that just keeps on giving. So Spencer, just the last slide, please. I do want to thank you for your time today and your interaction and your comments. I truly do appreciate and love that type of interaction. And I'd love to stay connected. So if you want more tools, support, or training around this, then feel free to reach out. And also, I will just drop in my LinkedIn. If you want to reach out through LinkedIn, you can find me there. And let me just drop that in. My LinkedIn. There you go. And you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed the session. And yeah, please reach out and have a great week. And I hope you practice your reframing this week. Okay, Maja, over to you.
Amazing. Thank you. That was really wonderful. I hope everyone found it insightful. Really quickly, we have a few minutes left. I just wanted to provide a quick update on the incoming legislation. There is the new long-term illness protected leave that's in effect in just a couple of days, where employees with over 13 weeks of service will be entitled to 27 weeks of unpaid leave. Also, if you are in the construction industry, effective July 1st, you will have to maintain any washroom facility you provide for workers and make available records of the washroom facility cleaning. And starting July 1st, employers in Ontario with 25 or more employees must provide their new hires with written details about their employment before their first day of work. So that includes legal name of the employer as well as any operating or business name. If it's different from the legal name, contact information for the employer, including address, telephone number, a general description or where it is anticipated that the employee will initially work, the employee's starting hourly or other wage rate or commission as applicable, the pay period and payday, as well as general description of the employee's initial anticipated hours of work. So if you have questions about any of these or need any guidance, please reach out. We're here to help. All right, so we're wrapping up. I wanted to thank both of our speakers today, Jackie and Brenda, for joining us, and everybody else that spent their lunch hour here with us. We are not going on break during the summer months, so we will be back in July and August and hope to see you soon. Okay, bye everyone.